David Goggins is about to tell us a little bit about self-imposed psychological warfare and the training ground of life. I love this concept because this is something that every single person can relate to and every single person has been through. This is episode 1212, David Goggins on the Joe Rogan Experience. I got my David shirt on. I'm Coach Colin, coolest high performance coach in the world. And if you want the absolute best insights to the podcast you love, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it.
And that's where I found the guts to talk about mine.
Well, there's purity in physical pursuits, right? Because it doesn't matter what your social status is. It doesn't matter how people perceive you. When it comes down to how long can you stay in that pool, when it comes down to how far can you run, right, when it comes down to how much can you push yourself past the part where you want to quit, right, how far can you keep going, there's a purity in that it dissolves social order, all that bullshit, what people think about you goes out the window. It's who are you right now?
That's right.
Who are you right now?
That's a true statement, man. And I look at it as psychological warfare. And that's where I started learning that life is one big psychological warfare that you play on yourself. You play on yourself, man. The most important conversation I ever had is with myself. And the shit I was telling myself was so fucked up. It was so wrong. It was so misguided. And other people start to write that dialogue for you also. And it starts to be what you say to yourself every single day. And I started creating a whole nother warfare. A whole nother battle started becoming. I was like, oh, hang on a second, Goggins. You have these tools. You have these tools. Your life was basically the perfect grounds for training for where you need to go in your life. All the beatings, all the bullying, all the, you going through learning disabilities, all the struggles. It was the absolute perfect training ground for you to go to where you need to go. And that's how I started looking at my life versus woe is me, poopy pants, kick a rock down the street mentality. It was, God just hooked you right the fuck up. He hooked you right up, man, with the perfect place. You were training for the first 18, 19, 20, you were training for this stuff, man. You had the advantage of everybody else versus, my God, they're so above me. They came from a great family. Mom and dad love them. They didn't stutter, they didn't struggle. No, man, your struggle is what made you who you are now. So I started flipping this into a whole different, I started being a master of what I was scared of. I was scared of my mind. And I became literally a master of that mind. And that's what from now on, it sets me apart from most people. I started diving into that.
I love this so much because every single one of us has been through a bunch of failures, stuff that was, traumatic to us, that was rough to us, that was shitty. And if you could just take that the way David has and start looking at that as a training ground. Like I talk about it all the time about like starting a business or pursuing anything and how when you fail and you struggle, like how those are like the prerequisites to like really achieving something. And it's so true because if you look at it like David just talked about, if you look at it like a training ground, like what have you been trained for? Like there's not a lot, like if you failed at a bunch of stuff in life, it's like you can look at yourself as a failure or you can look at somebody that has what David Goggins just brought up, has a tool set, has a skill set that most people don't have. Most people don't go around life failing and failing and failing. If you have, then you have something that a lot of people don't, which is that you have the ability to fall down and get back up. Really, a lot of people don't have that skill set. And it's only developed one way, by failing. Like if you've already went through it, I don't know, you're really ahead of the crowd. Like you might be positioning this right now or positioning all those things that happened to you in your life as you being a failure. But you can switch that up and be like, I have a skill set that most people don't have. Charles Bukowski, one time people asked him, like in an interview, they asked him, how does he write dialogue so well? I believe that was it. Something along those lines. But like, how does he write so well? And he's like, I've had the benefit of living a very crappy life. Like instead of like David Like David Goggins just said, instead of the poopy pants mentality of, man, I've had such a crappy life, Charles Bukowski's like, I have the benefit of having lived a crappy life. And he may not be the best example if you know about Charles Bukowski. I love his work, but he was a wild boy, very wild boy. But again, it's just another example of someone that flipped it. It's like, how can you flip it? Instead of looking at life like, man, this is something that I've been drugged through and it sucks so much, you can kind of flip it and look at it like, I've been through an amazing training program. This training program has trained me to do. Now that's up to you. I can't tell you what that thing is that you're meant to do. Like I've mentioned it before, like I'm a coach. I coach people, life coach, high performance, whatever you want to call it. So when I look back now and I got assaulted when I was a kid and I didn't have my dad and I had a very, I don't know what to call it, a strong mother who didn't speak much, a very stoic mother. I had a lot of bad relationships. I've been cheated on. I've gone through severe drug abuse. I've been in very violent situations. Like all of that felt horrible at the time, but now I look back and I'm like, I have this whole skill set that now when people come to me with certain issues, been addicted to cigarettes, been addicted to alcohol, been addicted to drugs. Like now when people come to me and they want help with certain things, it's rare that they can bring up something that I haven't already been through and had to drag myself out of, you know? So again, it's like, to your life, to you, what have you been through? And what is that, like, if we can look at that like a training ground, what has it trained you to do? Like I have a friend who was addicted to drugs heavily himself. And now he helps people who have been addicted to drugs. I know people who were like me and they worked in factories and had dead-end jobs and they hated it. Now they help people get out of that type of living and start their own businesses. Like, you can really, I know people who have been through traumatic stuff. I'm talking about horrible stuff, like stuff I can't even say on YouTube. Sexual stuff, assault stuff, like all sorts of terrible, terrible stuff. And now they help people who are going through those same things. So I'm not saying for everybody who's listening to this to become some kind of coach, but it's like, what have you been trained for throughout your life? What's been the consistent theme, whether it be failure or struggle? Like, how can you flip that and use that to your advantage now? You know, instead of having, again, the poopy pants mentality. I don't know why he talks like that. It's so weird. He'll say fuck in one sentence and then say poopy pants in the next. And I don't understand why. But that's Goggins. He's bad as he wants to be. He can say what he wants. But how can you flip it? What can you do? You don't have to hold on to what you've been through as this terrible, terrible thing, this terrible weight that's weighing you down, that you have to drag around with you. You know? You can mold and craft that experience that you've been into a weapon. And you can start using that weapon. Not in a violent way. I'm not calling for violence. But you know what I mean. A weapon towards life. And start getting what you want. But the question is, what have you been through? What do you want? And how can that training ground that you've been through help you get there? I'm out. Peace.